Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. I am smiling sheepishly. I wish you had an inkling into the conversation behind the cameras, but that is for the benefit of those in the studio. It's another Friday morning. Jumat Mubarak to our Muslim colleagues. We hope today turns out to be one of the best days yet for our viewers. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
Hello, good morning and welcome. Thank God it's Friday. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Welcome to Daybreak.
Yeah, we just keep laughing. Someday we'll have the opportunity to tell the stories behind the camera. It's a lot of drama. And very quickly, we take the headlines for this morning. Notorious bandit leader Shanonu killed in Kaduna airstrike.
Malami, Nigeria recovered 3.2 billion naira loot within a year.
Nigeria's first African country to launch digital currency, Central Bank Governor.
And hoodlums behead church security guard in Bayelsa.
And the news in details. A notorious bandit leader, Alhaji Shanonu, has been killed by the air component of the Operation Whale Punch at Okambu, a village about 131 kilometers from Kaduna. It was learned that Shanonu was killed alongside 17 of his gang members. Chief of Air Staff Air Marshal Oladayo Amao commended the troops for the feat and urged them not to let down their guards in the fight against terrorism and banditry ravaging the country. The Director of Nigerian Air Force Public Relations, Air Commodore Edward Gatwat, disclosed this in a statement on Wednesday. He said NAV aircraft continue to seek and decimate enemies of the state in their attempts to make life unbearable for innocent Nigerians.
Meanwhile, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has said Nigeria has recovered over 3.2 billion naira of stolen monies from various jurisdictions globally from March 2021 to May 2022. He said this on Thursday while featuring at the 46th session of the State House briefing organized by the Presidential Communications Team at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. He said the recovered foreign loot has since been dispersed into key infrastructure projects nationwide, including the Second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kano Road, and the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The minister also said the federal government raised 1.82 billion naira from the sale of bid forms and actual sale of forfeited properties in the first 18 months of the Buhari administration. He said the Justice Ministry had backed the federal government in various infrastructure funding agreements, but regretted that Nigeria currently faces a 329 billion naira funding gap.
That looks like a spit in the ocean.
Exactly.
But significant gains, if you like. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, on Thursday said Nigeria is the first country in Africa to launch the digital currency known as the e-Naira. Emefiele spoke at the opening ceremony of a two-day ongoing CBN Fair 2022 held concurrently in Makurdi, Benue State, and Lafia, Nasarawa State. Represented by Osita Nwasinobi, the Director of Corporate Communications Department of the CBN, the governor noted that the e-Naira became necessary for Nigeria to keep pace with other countries of the world. The governor stressed that not many people have heard about the e-Naira, hence the need for sensitization, even as CBN remains committed to ensuring that more people in the country are financially included.
And hoodlums suspected to be ritual killers have beheaded a 37-year-old security guard identified as Anthony Egbo at Elebele community in Ogbia local government area of Bayelsa State. It was learned that the incident occurred on Wednesday night on the premises of the Living Faith Church, otherwise known as Winners Chapel, in the community, where the deceased was a private security guard. Daily Trust gathered that the assistant pastor of the church discovered the mutilated corpse of the victim on the church premises. According to a source in the community, the head of the deceased was severed from the body while the throat was missing. Police spokesman in Bayelsa, SP Asinim Butswat, who confirmed the killing, said the corpse has been recovered and deposited at the Federal Medical Center in Agoa for autopsy. And he said investigation was ongoing to unravel the cause of the incident.
The things we hear these days that make the news. Sometimes you wonder whether these incidents are on the increase or the impact of social media have made them even more pronounced?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the frequency has actually increased, and of course the reporting of it has actually increased as well. It's not that these things have not been happening before, but still, I think it's a little bit of both.
It's unimaginable. And moving on to our reports this morning, policymakers in the energy, oil, and gas sector have been encouraged to create and implement strategies for the marginalized women group in the sector to thrive. The call was made during an advocacy and communication capacity building to ensure the challenges women in the sector face are addressed through a project advancing women in economic development. The report.
Despite the invaluable contributions of the energy, oil and gas sector to the country's economy, experts say harnessing capacities of all parties involved is lacking. Hence, the need for deliberate inclusion of women in the sector to unlock the potentials therein.
Stimulates our women, the members of Women in Energy, Oil and Gas, to start thinking of possibilities, to start thinking of ways we can close the energy gaps, both the gender gap, the energy poverty gap, and the transformational effects of Nigeria hosting that vast resource of energy in the country. So it is not just a gender thing, it's a total, if I may use the word, reformation that cuts across the energy industry.
The industry, from leadership roles in major corporations to jobs in mines and on oil rigs, remains male-dominated, even with the invention of technology. This and more are some of the areas the advocacy and communication capacity building seeks to address in order to guarantee the economic empowerment of women.
Shortfall of the presence of women in the oil and gas sector across board in terms of leadership, even in terms of participation, in terms of access. Women presence has still not yet been felt 4 decades after the establishment of the oil find in Nigeria. So this group is very timely because they are dealing with issues related to environment, oil and gas mining, and how that affects women and also even the communities where these mining activities do take place.
Only a few women there occupy leadership position. Train these women for them to have better skills, because they have been doing something. But we want them to acquire better skills in order to be more proficient in advocacy.
Demystifying the myth that women would not succeed in the industry, stakeholders believe will help encourage others to go into the sector, as the exploits of women hold brighter prospects for the sector and invariably the economy. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And stakeholders in the health sector have urged the federal and state governments to improve health infrastructure and build the capacity of health practitioners to provide quality healthcare service to citizens. They made the call at an event in Zamfara State where practitioners gathered to brainstorm on ways of improving access to better healthcare. According to them, the global COVID-19 pandemic, health emergencies and weak healthcare systems have posed greatest risks to Nigeria's health security and economy. The report.
With terrorism, banditry, and natural disasters identified as some of the major factors that are threatening health security and the economy in Nigeria, stakeholders say all hands need to be on deck to ensure healthcare services within the reach of every Nigerian. They harped on the need for policymakers to reposition the sector towards improving quality healthcare delivery to citizens and ensuring universal health coverage in the country.
I became the medical director over the last 17 months. Manpower delivery is one of his target priorities. During that period, he employed 15 consultants. These are the specialists with special training in different capacities to increase the service delivery of Zamfara State. And at the same time, he employed 40 medical officers to add to the services of Zamfara State.
For the governor of Zamfara State, Bello Muhammad, represented by his deputy Senator Hassan Nasiha, collaborating with relevant stakeholders is important to ensuring improved healthcare service delivery to people of the state.
In our effort to transform the state for the better and improve the health and social well-being of our people, we recently launched a medical outreach program in 4 local government areas of the senatorial district, that is Daybreak, Gusau, Kumbuda, and Maru, which will inshallah complete the remaining 10 local governments soonest by Gansema.
The chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association, Zamfara State Branch, Manir Baturi, called for commitment on the part of stakeholders to strengthen health systems in order for the country to make progress in the sector.
So why we choose this team is we look at what is happening globally. We look at the pandemics that affect the global community. We look at other health emergencies that are affecting most particularly African nations. And we also look at their impact on our daily lives. So we now come to understand that actually these key issues are posing a greatest risk to economy and of course to security. So we say it is high time that we sit down and deliberate and come out with ways that we can surmount these challenges so that we can have a healthy nation with economic prosperity.
Some stakeholders were recognized for their contributions to the health sector, including the Deputy Governor of the state, Senator Hassan Nasiha, and Senator Kabiru Marafa.
Now from health to the presidency. President Muhammadu Buhari has met with representatives of the victims of the Abuja-Kaduna train attack, promising that his administration would ensure that each person held in captivity is returned home safely. The president said the 31 victims left will be extracted from captivity safely, which is why government had not considered the military option to wipe out the terrorists. Kainde Amadu has the report.
There is a lot of emotion invested in this very tragic situation. 31 victims remain in captivity, most probably because their families do not have the resources to pay the huge figures demanded as ransom.
Many of the victims have been out from the captivity, which they paid ransom of monies, which the remaining those in captivity doesn't have the ability and capacity to at least rescue their loved ones. So we don't know what to do because the money that are demanding, we doesn't have the money.
But this meeting between the president and victims' families is an attempt to demonstrate the determination of government to rescue them.
Today's audience, Your Excellency, is a manifestation of the efforts your administration has put in to secure the release of all those in captivity. Indeed, the fact that they have been invited to an audience with you this afternoon has proven to them that government is not resting on its oars towards securing the release of each and everyone that is still held in captivity.
Bringing the victims back alive is top on the priority list of the president. This is why government has not considered the military option to wipe out the terrorists.
It is understandable that emotions typically run high. We have received several suggestions about the employment of lethal military force in extracting those still being held in captivity. This option has indeed been considered and evaluated. However, the condition to guarantee a successful outcome and minimize potential collateral damage could not be assured, and therefore that course of action had to be reluctantly discarded.
The terrorists are applying guerrilla tactics by using those they abduct as human shields. This meeting clearly demonstrates the dilemma government is caught in. The abducted victims are not just numbers, and by meeting their families and putting a face to them, government is caught in an even greater quandary. From State House Abuja, Kainde Amudu, Trust TV News.
Now, over 40 gunmen riding on motorcycles attacked Nkatako quarters in Katsina metropolis on Tuesday night. The gunmen, suspected to be armed robbers, took about 15 minutes, shooting sporadically to scare residents of Nkatako. Abdullahi Yamadi visited the area and has an update.
There are increasing attacks on residences within the last few days in the ancient city of Katsina. At Nkatako quarters, the gunmen forced themselves into the house of one Alhaji Bigi and dispossessed his family of their belongings, including his car. Alhaji Bigi, who was lucky to have scaled his house fence to escape attack, however, sustained various degrees of injuries in the process. The attacks are rampant such that one can hardly comprehend what it really is. Is it robbery, terrorism, or what? Truly, I can understand security operatives are overwhelmed. Something needs to be done. When Trust Television News contacted his family for comments, they said the survivor was barred from seeing journalists for security and health issues. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Kabir, one of the 3 survivors of the Shola Quarters attack, also in Katsina metropolis, passed on at Federal Teaching Hospital, Katsina, Wednesday night. Kabir died from gunshot injuries he sustained during the Sunday's terrorist attack on Shola Quarters. The authorities are saying the increasing attacks on residences within the last few days in the ancient city of Katsina may not be the sign of change of modus of operandi by terrorists.
We must be telling the communities of security tips on the need to collaborate, on the need to come out and say things that you know. So many of us, we know so person was in the forest and he came back. We know so many of them, they are living above their means. How? Where do they get those money? How? Where? And we must ask, and what is happening?
Beyond the terrorist attacks and armed robbery cases, there is also an increase in motorcycles and car thefts within Katsina metropolis. I'm a victim because my car was stolen just 6 days ago. There are more than 101 cases of car and motorcycle thefts on record in Katsina, especially in Katsina metropolis. We're in trouble. The deteriorating insecurity is largely attributed to poverty, high cost of living, and proliferation of drugs and its abusers. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
It's an unfortunate incident there from Katsina. It appears one day, one trouble from one community to the other. A couple of days ago, myself and Ibrahim were listening to a commissioner of police saying they have devised a very strategic response that would nip this in the bud. But what we continue to see is an escalation on the part of the bandits and those who don't mean well for the citizenry. I don't know how long it will take that attack to mature. We don't know what is stopping that attack, that strategy from kicking in. Whatever it is, the people of Katsina have had one too many. And to think that this is the home state of the president, even more so deserve an urgent response from the security agency. No place, as far as this country is concerned, deserves to live in the kind of fear that the people of Katsina have sort of lived in over the last 3 years. It's about time that the security forces wake up to their responsibility and protect life and property, especially of people living in very vulnerable communities, as we have seen in the case of the farmers and the rest of them. People whose life, is a struggle one day after the other to then come under this kind of heavy shelling and fear would make even the current situation worse as it is.
When you look at it, these people are already struggling to survive.
Absolutely.
Just making it day by day, just trying to get through the day and on to the next one. And then unfortunately you come and add this to the particular situation.
It just doesn't go well.
It is terrible.
Yeah, and you take family members, you shoot others, some even die. and then they have to sell all their farm produce and whatever to go and rescue them. When they return, they are hit by floods.
Exactly.
And whatever is left of the farmland is a mess.
It's
you
really
just
not.
wonder how people survive. You know. We'll take a short break at this point. When we return, we will serve you with the newspaper review. Please don't go away.
Where you find that a look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Well, right now we're going to swing straight into the front pages of the newspapers this morning, and we're going to start with the Daily Trust. It carries this major headline on the front page: "We won't use force to rescue abducted train victims." That is attributed to the president. And we have riders here that say meet release victims, says neutralizing terrorists won't stop. "We can't afford ransom," says the families, and presidential guards killed by terrorists buried amid tears. Now, that's a major story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Moving down the front page, our church attack, Murich seeks compensation for Fulani victims. That is on page 5. Man promises woman marriage, dupes her of 5 million naira. That is on page 21. Organ harvesting, FG rules out interference in Ekweremadu's trial. Details of that story can be found on page 4 of the Daily Trust. Right below the nameplate, governors protest over $418 million Paris Club deductions, baseless, says AGF. And no going back on tariff hike on calls data, says Finance Minister. Now those details can be found on page 22. 1,755 terrorists surrendered, 29 killed in 2 weeks, says the military. For details of that, pick up the Daily Trust, turn to page 2. Now, these are the major headlines on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
We move on quickly to the Nigerian Tribune. And the major story on the Nigerian Tribune this morning, it's on the Paris Club refund. $418 million Paris Club refund. Governors governors can't complain over deductions. This is according to Malemi, the Attorney General of the Federation. We rely on Buhari's directive to halt payments of refunds to consultants, NGF. You'll find the details of that story on page 5. And right above, or right below that story are pictures of the major incidences of yesterday. We have the burials of the soldiers that were killed at the recent attack here in Abuja when the terrorists struck. And right above the name marks, we have state government workers suffer over backlog of unpaid salary. This is according to budget survey. Abia, Taraba, Ondo, all workers. Fuel subsidy scam, reps to probe over 200 accounts domiciled with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And we have the other story, no going back on 5% excise duty on data and calls, according to the Finance Minister. Implementation in line with Finance Act, she says. And then below the name marks, we have Muslim ticket, Catholics knuckle along over comments on Pope, demands apology. Train attack, lethal force, not an option to rescue captive. Buhari meets relatives of adopted passengers. And no forest reserve sold by Biodun. That is according to the Ogun State government, and the details of that you'll find on page 25. Troops kill 74 terrorists, release 45 kidnapped victims. Our church attack, 2 more suspects arrested, according to the DHQ. Buhari attack, Guards Brigade buries captain, attack 4 others. And 160 million Nigeria at risk of yellow fever. This is according to the World Health Organization. You'll find details of this when you pick up a copy of the Nigerian Tribune.
The next newspaper we're looking at is the Daily Sun, which carries this major headline on the front page. Guards Brigade buries slain captain, 4 other soldiers in Abuja. And terrorists creating parallel government in Kaduna, El Rufai cries to Buhari. That is the major headline on the front page of the Sun newspaper this morning. And Nigeria, UNDP, Obasanjo, George paint a gloomy picture. That is another headline on the front page of the Daily Sun, and it comes with these riders. Country governed by corrupt, unfit leaders, says the world body, and anyone who says nation is fine should be examined, says the former president. Armageddon hovering over country, says PDP chieftain, and Adebanjo outlines steps to take Nigeria out of the current mess. Now, the details of that story can be found on page 6 of the Daily Sun. Right there at the bottom of the page, troops kill 74 terrorists, rescue 45 kidnapped victims. That is on page 4 of the Daily Sun. Federal government will continue to deduct $418 million Paris Club refund, says Malemi, and the rider here says signed indemnity, part payment confirmed governor's liability. Ekweremadu, why federal government can't interfere, says Malemi again. And I'm committed to a better Nigeria anchored on youth development. This is a statement attributed to Obi. Another headline here that says Muslim ticket irresponsible, reprehensible, says Bishop Kuka. Details of that can be found on page 3. President assures of safe return of remaining 31 abducted train passengers, meets families of victims. And beside the nameplate there, stop killings in Southeast, others, Catholic bishop tells government, and that's on page 4. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper this morning.
Moving on to this day newspaper. We have above the name marks, Discos, Nigeria yet to generate up to 6,000 megawatt electricity since independence. Says country needs 200,000 megawatts to meet power needs of its 200 million population. And we have a belt under that story. Despite opposition, FG set to implement 5% hike on data and voice calls. And the major story is also staying with the incident from the AGF. Malami, governors complain over 418 million Paris Club refund baseless, accusing them of indemnifying payments to consultants. Puts loot recovered from external jurisdiction in 14 months at 3.2 billion. Says government has secured conviction of over 1,000 terrorists. Declares Nigeria won't interfere with Ekweremadu's trial in the UK. You have pictures there of the president's meeting with the family of the train adoptees. And we also have On the front page, 5 presidential guards killed in gunfight with terrorists buried. Buhari, why we didn't use maximum force to freeze Kaduna train attack victim, says use of lethal military force was jettisoned to avoid potential casualty. Assures of safe release of the remaining 31 adoptees. Obi, PDP, APC borrowed over $500 billion in 20 years. These are the major stories on the front page of this day newspaper.
Next, we'll take a look at the Vanguard newspaper this morning and carries this major headline. PDP, Atiku sends Adamawa governor to Wike meeting deadlocked. And it comes with these riders. Adamawa governor Umar Fintri's meeting with Wike deadlocked on Ayu. Pressure on Ayu by party leaders to resign. And Wike insists he must resign as he promised. Face-off threatens composition of campaign council and PDP flags not lowered in River State Government House. Government source party spokesman, and as campaign DG may come from Southwest. And we respect every member's freedom of expression, says the PDP. While another rider here says majority supports Ayu, that is the National Working Committee. Well, that is the major headline on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. While talking 2023, it says Catholics blast Lalong over reference to Pope, demand an apology. Right at the bottom of the page there, Kaduna train attack, why I didn't use military force to rescue victims, says Buhari. And Finance Minister insists on 5% telecom tax. Nigeria Air experts fault FG's operational model for new carrier. And 2023 census data will help tackle nation's security challenge, says Buhari. Our massacre, military DSS nabbed 2 more suspects. And right above the nameplate, El-Rufai writes Buhari says terrorists creating parallel government in Kaduna. And $418 million Paris Club refund deductions. Governor's objections baseless, says Malemi. Army buries captain, 4 soldiers killed during terrorist attack in Buhari, Abuja. And 2023, I remain committed to a better Nigeria anchored on youth development. Now, that is attributed to Obi. These are the major headlines on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
And we move on to The Guardian with the motto, Dear Conscience Nurtured by the Truth. We have the major headline, Catholics knock Lalong over Pope's comment, want him suspended. Lalong, my reference to the Pope was a mark of reverence, not ridicule. APC Northern Christians insist on VP slot submit protest letter to Buhari. Lalong won't resign as campaign DG, says APC group. And we have the beautiful pictures there done in the front page of The Guardian with the heroes largely of the Commonwealth Games as well as the World Athletic Championship. We have the Toby Amusan and other gold medalists from the event, and with the title Unsung Road to Birmingham Hard Won Victory. It has been a superlative performance from our guests. Unfortunately, fortunately our guests, not unfortunate. I wonder what the male counterparts actually went to Birmingham to do. They were probably having tea while the ladies were practicing and bringing glory to motherland. But the painful part of it is, well, I don't know with athletics, when in football, while the girls had brought us more glory, the men have earned more money from losing.
The men keep earning more money, actually.
From losing and then bringing glory to motherland. And we have other stories right there on The Guardian. Headers kill 6, injure others in Suswan's local government. Absence of vaccine, heightened fear of monkeypox. I'm sure that will be in Nigeria. Millions of oppressed, dehumanized Nigerians LP structure, says Obi. And other stories there, terrorists running parallel government in Kaduna, El-Rufai writes Buhari. These are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian newspaper this morning. We would now take a quick breather. When we return, our analyst will join us in the studio for the in-depth review. Stay with us.
and where you find that a person look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. I was just joking with Ibrahim behind the scenes that we have to probe the men's participation at Birmingham, whatever that means.
We need to identify the root cause.
You need to identify the root cause. Whatever it was they were taking in their hotels that sort of blanked them out of the medals chat, we need to understand. On that note, we would like to welcome to the studio a regular analyst and a friend of the house, the editor, 21st Century Chronicle, Marlon Nuruddin Abdallah. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good morning.
Thank you very much again for finding time to be here and to provide insights on the major stories making the front page of the newspapers this morning. We start very quickly with the Daily Trust as usual, and we have the major story there from the Daily Trust. We won't use force to rescue adopted trained victims. That's according to the president. I know in this show and a number of times we have had to review the president's previous directive, flush them out, flush them out, flush them out, flush them out. And after several instructions to flush out, now we are hearing we won't use force. What did you make of this story when it broke?
Okay, to start with, I think after Sunday, I'm afraid Lai Mohammed will not slam Daily Trust with another 5 million fine for using this, because this actually will embolden the terrorists. The CNC, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the biggest African economy, the biggest black nation on earth, is saying that we won't use force against terrorists. Terrorists we have gazetted legally as terrorists. Terrorists, the president severally given security forces shoot-aside order. And now he's taking 360-degree turn that won't use force. Then what else will you use? So what the president is saying, actually, that the government will pay ransom. So Mr. Terrorists in the bush, in the forest of Birnangwara, if you keep calm, no any Tocano is coming, no drone is coming, we're going to pay and rescue and release and get the release of the 31 on.
But that's on the one side of the president's comment. On the flip side, we saw, during Wise making this statement and hosting the family, the spokesperson for the group was saying those who have so far been released are the ones who have been able to afford the ransom, that the ones still in captivity are the families that have not been able to raise the money. Why does the president's comment sound like even the successes that have been recorded are attributed to the president rather than the private efforts that we have seen in the media?
I don't know, because he said that the federal government is doing enough. But unfortunately, and with all humility, Mr. President, you are best. It's not enough. That is one. And secondly, I think from the second batch of 11 hostages that were released, which we later learned it was a prisoner swap, 30 family members of the terrorists, including children, women, and even men, were released by the federal government. And it was during that deal that 11 of the hostages were released as well, mostly women, particularly those that are suffering from ill health. If there is anything that you will say the federal government participates, that is it. And that is why the self-acclaimed negotiator in Kaduna, Marlon Tukurmamu, backed out. But from the first two, the DG of the Bank of Agri, he paid. A woman was released, that she paid. And the subsequent batches, about 3 or 4 of the 7 people paid. The Pakistani paid 200 million, so we were told. The remaining ones paid 100 million. The next batch of 3 equally paid. The in-laws of the former military governor of Kano and Benue State equally paid We learned that a serving lawmaker paid for that woman, her husband, and the 4 kids to be released. So what is the president talking about? We thought, what is more, is there any statement that will embolden the terrorists, glorify them more than this? The president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces is saying that we are not going to use force. Even if that is the position of the federal government, it shouldn't be made public because they will be there celebrating. And even the meeting is coming 135 days after the attack. That was the president all this while.
But before Ibrahim comes in, families whose victims' families would sort of find that news somewhat pacifying because there was no way the government would have undertaken a raid without collateral damage.
We know that 60, with all sensibility to the families of the victims, 63 people were abducted. We know that the Nigerian armed forces have zero security, zero capacity in that aspect. They don't conduct any rescue because we know, even we have been fighting terrorism in the last 12 years. People were sent to foreign lands to train. But up till this moment, they will be telling you that, no, you know, this is guerrilla warfare, this is urban warfare, we can't, understand? 12 years after, we are still lamenting. We know that. Why can't you need foreign help? Whereas the victims, the hostages are so unlucky. If, for instance, there is one American national, a British national, or even a French national,
story would have been different.
It would have been, they won't stay up to 1 week there because the country of origin of that hostage will not wait for Abuja. You understand? So what we are saying here is this: we know that your armed forces don't have the capacity. Why can't you seek foreign help? You can go to UK, you can go to Germany, you can go to the United States, you can go to Israel. All these things, they have commandos that they can do this. And yes, we cannot rule out collateral damage. But what we know is this: out of the 63 people, less than 10 will be dead. And the remaining will be rescued. And it will send a signal to the bandits. Not this, that we are not going to use force. Okay, what next? They'll collect the money now. And who knows where they will strike again.
Well, it is quite unfortunate. Actually, my question was going to be the timing of the meeting, and you actually just made mention of it, that it's actually coming too late. Where was the president when all of this was happening, and it had to take all this while before he could actually meet the families or representatives of the families. But just before we move on from this issue, how important is it? Is it going to make any difference, him meeting the families or the representatives of the families or even the victims that have actually been rescued? Is it going to make any difference?
Certainly no. And maybe finally the government has concluded to pay ransom. That informed the meeting. On Tuesday, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Irabo, had a media briefing, and he hinted that the abduction is not going to be over. So I think maybe along it is in that line that the president, and apparently, when you are dealing with terrorists, we see how other countries do. Yeah, there are issues that you pay ransom. You can use third parties and pay ransom, you understand? But if, for instance, that the government has any military option, and they waited 135 days, look at it now, look at the economic loss. The Abuja-Kaduna train has been grounded for 135 days. Even the Lagos-Ibadan, I'm talking about the standard gauge, has been affected Not to talk of the Lagos, Jebba, Ilorin, down to Kano. They grounded everything. Do you know how much billions the federal government has lost? And this is a PPP investment, you understand? So if you are going to pay ransom, it should have been quick thinking. Yes, the security chief should tell the president the truth. He's a general. We don't have capacity, Mr. President. It's the normal thing that police stations are telling people. When your loved one is abducted, you'll go there. They will tell you, yes, we can mobilize and go there, but you know, sir, it's 50-50. You will be demoralized. What they are simply telling you, in other words, is go and pay ransom. So that's what the president is saying. Why waiting 135 days? This happened March 28th. Today is August 12. 4.5 months. Why? Pay the ransom, use the back end.
Interesting.
And so on and so forth.
We'll move away from that conversation to some other stories that seem to be making the front pages of the papers this morning. It has to do with the Paris Fund Club refund. It appears to be fireworks between the attorney generals and the governors over that planned deductions. And I'm sure the governors are also looking at the dwindling revenues from, well, their major source, which is FAC, and the possible deductions that could leave most of the states completely grounded. How severe, of a potential problem is this whole Paris Fund Club crisis?
So, I don't know why the federal government is bent in implementing that judgment. You understand? And I don't even know why they are not thinking of out-of-court settlement. We follow the case. This thing did not happen even under Buhari's administration.
That's right.
The bottom line is this. The person that hired the consultants was not the legitimate chairman of the Governors Forum at the time he did the hiring. It was Governor Jang of Plateau State. You remember that very tense election? He got the lower votes. The then governor of Rivers State, Amechi, got the higher votes, but he declared himself. Jang declared himself the winner because he had the backing of the federal government, President Jonathan at that time, you understand? So that was it. It was during that stalemate that he hired these people. But when they came, they said, no, you haven't done anything to guzzle such amounts. But unfortunately for the Governors Forum, they didn't take the matter serious. The other party went to court and they got a judgment. That was the beginning of the problem. And it was that judgment that had been. I think they didn't even make any appearance. They thought that it wasn't serious.
For granted.
But the other party got the judgment. And why even Malemi? I don't know. Sometimes there are certain court judgments that the Attorney General and Minister of Justice is very, waiting being on as they talk. You remember when that Abba High Court judgment on the Electoral Act? He quickly announced that yes, they got a judgment. Nobody knew when the case was going on, and they were going to gazette it. So, with all due respect to their learned judges and whatever, when that woman in Aba, that her lordship in Aba, produced that Aba market. We just learned that the Attorney General is saying that okay, they are going to gazette. So why the hurry? They should know that the 36 governors, they are part and parcel of the government.
That's right.
Whatever it is. And this is a government that is fighting corruption. It won elections on the troika of fighting corruption. So, and these consultants, particularly with what happened, there are some people, former Governor Yari is facing criminal charges because of consultants. But why is the federal government that is prosecuting Yari for hiring phony consultants is now
back in the
banned in releasing over 400 million to consultants. The Accountant General of the Federation that was recently suspended, my brother from Kano, you understand, used consultants to steal over 109 billion. So now that consultant now will go to court, and before you know it, now the federal government will say, okay, pay him his money.
We saw that with the PIG.
So look at him from, and again, if you remove 400 million, deduct from the governor's order, with this paltry
income,
the wahala will come back to the federal government.
Exactly.
Buhari paid more than 10 installments of bailouts to state government. And as I'm talking to you, most of the state government cannot even pay salary. They are not up to date, including the good ones. Look at Borno, for instance. Borno, yes, they pay gratuity and OTPU, but only for the state workers. The local government, just yesterday, for 11 years, they're not paid. Look at your brother in Kogi, the White Lion. He got all the bailouts, but they didn't pay. So it will worsen the situation. They should know that, and they are in elective
season.
So maybe that's what the governor should tell the Attorney General. We are in election year.
All right, so quickly before we go, talking about worse situations. A few weeks back, we heard that this telecom tax was going to be introduced and people were going to pay more for making calls and data and what have you. It seems to have died down a little bit, and now it has resurfaced again, and the government is saying there's no going back on that. Generally, what is your view on that particular scenario?
Yeah, the problem is not just taxing people, but what do we do with the tax? Does it? In the UK, they say taxpayers' money, you know. And maybe with this, because we are getting more revenue from non-oil sector, for instance, so we will be holding the government more accountable. To be fair to the finance minister, just yesterday, OPEC is saying that our production, our crude oil production daily, has dipped to 1.18 million barrels per day. You know, our benchmark for 2022 budget was 1.7 to 1.8 million barrels per day. So we are losing almost 600 or 700 barrels per day, meaning less money to the federal coffers. So the government has to use it as ways and means. We have depleted the SS crude account, even for reserves. You and whatnot, you spend maybe in a day or so, you use call maybe 5,000 or 10,000. You need to be taxed. That's a reality. But the Sunday use maybe up to 50,000 worth of airtime and maybe in a week or so. He needs to be taxed. He's a big man.
I have to publish a disclaimer.
So in that case, you know, I'm fully with the lady because there are we need to pay salary. The government need to pay salary. There are projects that need to be funded. And what have you. So the oil, now we have the largest industrial stealing up crude oil, you understand? And the government is not doing anything about it. So she has to look other ways. And because big guys like you now are wasting money on calls and data, you need to be taxed. So now you'll pay 12.5.
Interesting perspective there about wasting calls on tax. The issue of oil theft is actually unfortunate on a scale. This is just for your information. On a scale, the size of the oil theft in Nigeria is the third biggest production in Africa. So after Nigeria's oil production and then that of Angola, the third biggest oil production is the one stolen from Nigeria. It's out daring. You know, the circumstance is to think of the size of the Navy and the Army we have. Well, if you can't fight the terrorists, you should be able to stop bunkering. This is too big a size to be allowed to travel beyond our borders as if to say nothing is happening. It's not traveling by air. These things are moving out by some road.
Who are mandated to stop it are part of it.
Absolutely. There is no other way to put it. It's been an interesting conversation with Nuruddin Abdallah, always to be expected, very charged, very informed, very analytical. And we couldn't have asked for more for a Friday morning analysis. It's a pleasure to have you join us, the editor of 21st Century Chronicle.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, and have a delightful Friday.
Thank you.
We will take a short break now. When we return, the program continue on Top of the Hour.
But in a situation where you find that a look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Daybreak. I am Ibrahim Yusuf, right here on Trust TV. Well, it's a beautiful Friday morning, and of course, the show has been going on. Well, if you're just joining the train, it's better late than never, I guess. It's top of the hour right now, and welcome back.
After having the kind of coffee Ibrahim had had, there's no better way to describe this Friday's morning. Indeed, it's a beautiful one. I'm Sunday Michael Ogun.
All right, we go straight into the headlines for this hour. Notorious bandit leader Shanunu killed in Kaduna airstrikes.
Malami, Nigeria recovered 3.2 billion loot within a year.
And Nigeria, the first African country to launch digital currency, says the CBN governor.
Hoodlums behead church security guard in Bayelsa.
Right now, we'll take the details of these stories. A notorious bandit leader, Alhaji Shanunu, has been killed by the air component of the Operation World Punch in Ukambo, a village about 131 kilometers from Kaduna. Now, it was learned that Shanunu was killed alongside 17 of his gang members. Now, the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao, commended the troops for the feat and urged them not to let down their guard in the fight against terrorism and banditry ravaging the country. Director of the Nigeria Air Force Public Relations, Air Commodore Edward Gapquet, disclosed this in a statement on Wednesday. He said the Nigeria Air Force aircrafts continue to seek and decimate enemies of the state in their attempt to make life unbearable for innocent Nigerians.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has said Nigeria has recovered over 3.2 billion naira of stolen monies from various jurisdictions globally from March 2021 to May 2022. He said this while featuring at the 46th session of the State House briefing organized by the Presidential Communications team at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. He said the recovered foreign loot had since been disbursed into key infrastructure projects nationwide, including the Second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kanu Road, and the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The minister also said the federal government raised 1.8 billion from the sale of bid forms and actual sales of forfeited properties in the first 18 months of the Muhammadu Buhari administration. Malemi, who said the Justice Ministry had backed the federal government in various infrastructure funding agreements, regretted that Nigeria currently faces a 329 billion funding gap.
And the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, on Thursday, said Nigeria is the first country in Africa to launch the digital currency known as the e-Naira. Emefiele spoke at the opening ceremony of the two-day ongoing CBN Fair 2022 held concurrently in Makurdi, Benue State, and Lafia in Nasarawa. Represented by Osita Wanisobi, the Director of the Corporate Communications Department of the CBN, the governor noted that the e-Naira became necessary for Nigeria to keep pace with other countries of the world. The governor stressed that not many people have heard about the e-Naira, hence the need for sensitization, even as the CBN remains committed to ensuring that more people in the country are financially included.
And on a sad note, hoodlums suspected to be ritual killers have beheaded a 37-year-old security guard identified as Anthony Ebo at Elebele community in Obia local government area of Bayelsa State. It was learned that the incident occurred on Wednesday night on the premises of the Living Faith Church, otherwise known as Winners Chapel, in the community, where the deceased was a private security guard. Daily Trust gathered that the assistant pastor of the church discovered the mutilated corpse of the victim on the church premises. According to the source, in the community, the head of the deceased was severed from the body while the throat was missing. Police spokesperson in Bayelsa, SP Asinim Butwap, who confirmed the killing, said the corpse had been recovered and deposited at the Federal Medical Center, Yonagwa, for autopsy. He said investigation was ongoing to reveal the cause of the incident.
And that's a wrap on the headlines for this hour. We go straight into some news reports now. Policymakers in the energy, oil and gas sector have been encouraged to create and implement strategies for the marginalized women group in the sector to thrive. Now, the call was made during an advocacy and communication capacity building to ensure the challenges women in the sector face are addressed through a project advancing women in economic development. The report.
Despite the invaluable contributions of the energy, oil and gas sector to the country's economy, experts say harnessing capacities of all parties involved is lacking. Hence, the need for deliberate inclusion of women in the sector to unlock the potentials therein.
Stimulate our women, the members of Women in Energy, Oil and Gas, to start thinking of possibilities, to start thinking of ways we can close the energy gaps, both the gender gap, the energy poverty gap, and the transformational effects of Nigeria hosting that vast resource of energy in the country. So it is not just a gender thing, it's a total if I may use the word, reformation that cuts across the energy industry.
The industry, from leadership roles in major corporations to jobs in mines and on oil rigs, remains male-dominated, even with the invention of technology. This and more are some of the areas the advocacy and communication capacity building seeks to address in order to guarantee the economic empowerment of women.
Shortfall of the presence of women in the oil and gas sector across board in terms of leadership, even in terms of participation, in terms of access. Women presence has still not yet been felt 4 decades after the establishment of the oil find in Nigeria. So this group is very timely because they are dealing with issues related to environment, oil and gas mining, and how that affects women and also even the communities where these mining activities do take place.
Only a few women there occupy leadership position. Train these women for them to have better skills, because they have been doing something. But we want them to acquire better skills in order to be more proficient in advocacy.
Demystifying the myth that women would not succeed in the industry, stakeholders believe will help encourage others to go into the sector, as the exploits of women hold brighter prospects for the sector and invariably the economy. Aisha Salihu, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Moving on to health, stakeholders in the health sectors have urged the federal and state governments to improve health infrastructure and build the capacity of health practitioners to provide quality healthcare service to citizens. They made the call at an event in Zamfara State where practitioners gathered to brainstorm on ways of improving access to healthcare infrastructure. According to them, the global COVID-19 pandemic, health emergencies, and weak health systems have posed the greatest risks to Nigeria's health security and economy. The report.
With terrorism, banditry, and natural disasters identified as some of the major factors that are threatening health security and the economy in Nigeria, stakeholders say all hands need to be on deck to ensure healthcare services within the reach of every Nigerian. They harped on the need for policymakers to reposition the sector towards improving quality healthcare delivery to citizens and ensuring universal health coverage in the country.
Become the medical director over the last 17 months. Manpower delivery is one of his target priorities. During that period, he employed 15 consultants. These are the specialists with special training in different capacity to increase the service delivery of Zamfara State. And at the same time, he employed 40 medical officers to add to the services of Zamfara State.
For the governor of Zamfara State, Bello Mohammed, represented by his deputy Senator Hassan Nasiha, collaborating with relevant stakeholders is important to ensuring improved healthcare service delivery to people of the state.
In our effort to transform the state for the better and improve the health and social well-being of our people, we recently launched a medical outreach program in 4 local government areas of the senatorial district, that is Daybreak, Gusau, Kumbudo, and Maru, which will inshallah complete the remaining 10 local governments soonest by Gansema.
The chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association, Zamfara State Branch, Manir Baturi, called for commitment on the part of stakeholders to strengthen health systems in order for the country to make progress in the sector.
So why we choose this team is we look at what is happening globally. We look at the pandemics that affect the global community. We look at other health emergencies that are affecting most particularly African nations, and we also look at their impact on our daily lives. So we now come to understand that actually these key issues are posing a greatest risk to economy and of course to security. So we say it is high time that we sit down and deliberate and come out with ways that we can surmount these challenges so that we can have a healthy nation with economic prosperity.
Some stakeholders were recognized for their contributions to the health sector, including the Deputy Governor of the state, Senator Hassan Nasiha, and Senator Kabiru Marafa.
Now to matters of security, where President Muhammadu Buhari has met with representatives of the victims of the Abuja-Kaduna train attack, promising that his administration will ensure that each person held in captivity is returned home safely. Now, the president said the 31 victims left would be extracted from captivity safely, which is why government had not considered the military option to wipe out the terrorists. Kende Amodu reports.
There is a lot of emotion invested in this very tragic situation. 31 victims remain in captivity, most probably because their families do not have the resources to pay the huge figures demanded as ransom.
Many of the victims have been out from the captivity, which they paid ransom of monies, which the remaining, those in captivity, doesn't have the ability and capacity to at least rescue their loved ones. So we don't know what to do because the money that are demanding, we doesn't have the money.
But this meeting between the president and victims' families is an attempt to demonstrate the determination of government to rescue them.
Today's audience, Your Excellency, is a manifestation of the efforts your administration has put in to secure the release of all those in captivity. Indeed, the fact that they have been invited to an audience with you this afternoon has proven to them that government is not resting on its oars towards securing the release of each and everyone that is still held in captivity.
Bringing the victims back alive is top on the priority list of the president. This is why government has not considered the military option to wipe out the terrorists.
It is understandable that emotions typically run high. We have received several suggestions about the employment of lethal military force in extracting those still being held in captivity. This option has indeed been considered and evaluated. However, the condition to guarantee a successful outcome and minimize potential collateral damage could not be assured, and therefore that course of action had to be reluctantly discarded.
The terrorists are applying guerrilla tactics by using those they abduct as human shields. This meeting clearly demonstrates the dilemma government is caught in. The abducted victims are not just numbers, and by meeting their families and putting a face to them, government is caught in an even greater quandary. From State House Abuja, Kende Amudu, Trust TV News.
And staying with the matters of security, over 40 gunmen riding on motorcycles attacked Yankatako quarters in Katsina Metropolis on Tuesday night. The gunmen, suspected to be armed robbers, took about 15 minutes shooting sporadically to scare residents of Yankatako. Abdullahi Yamadi visited the area and has an update.
There are increasing attacks on residences within the last few days in the ancient city of Katsina. At Yankatako quarters, the gunmen forced themselves into the house of one Alhaji Bigi and dispossessed his family of their belongings, including his car. Alhaji Bigi, who was lucky to have scaled his house fence to escape attack, however, sustained various degrees of injuries in the process. The attacks are rampant such that one can hardly comprehend what it really is. Is it robbery, terrorism, or what? Truly, I can understand security operatives are overwhelmed. Something needs to be done. When Trust Television News contacted his family for comment, they said the survivor was barred from seeing journalists for security and health issues. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Kabir, one of the 3 survivors of the Shola Quarters attack, also in Katsina Metropolis, passed on at Federal Teaching Hospital, Katsina, Wednesday night. Kabir died from gunshot injuries he sustained during the Sunday's terrorist attack on Shola Quarters. The authorities are saying The increasing attacks on residences within the last few days in the ancient city of Katsina may not be the sign of change of modus of operandi by terrorists.
We must be telling the communities of security tips on the need to collaborate, on the need to come out and say things that you know. So many of us, we know so person was in the forest and he came back. We know so many of them, they are living above their means. How? Where do they get those money? How? Where? And we must ask, and what is happening?
Beyond the terrorist attacks and armed robbery cases, there is also an increase in motorcycles and car thefts within Katsina metropolis. I'm a victim because my car was stolen just 6 days ago. There are more than 101 cases of car and motorcycle thefts on record in Katsina, especially in Katsina metropolis. We're in trouble. The deteriorating insecurity is largely attributed to poverty, high cost of living, and proliferation of drugs and its abusers. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Well, on that note, that's a wrap on the reports and headlines for this hour right here on Daybreak. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll get into the main topic of the day. Do stay with us.
Dear residents of our beautiful capital city of Abuja, I know we all desire to have a world-class city with working infrastructure and clean streets. That is why the Federal Capital Territory Administration is investing a lot of resources and manpower to ensure prompt evacuation of refuse from all nooks and crannies of the city. Now, this can only be sustained if all residents play their part by promptly paying their waste collection bills. Encourage everyone around you to be patriotic and pay their bills. The task of keeping Abuja clean is for all of us. Remember, soup way sweet, na money kill out. This message is from the Federal Capital Territory Administration.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. We move on straight to our conversation this morning, and it will be politics. Indeed, it appears that the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, are yet to recover from the fallout of the party's convention that elected former Vice President Atiku Abubakar as its presidential candidate for the 2023 elections. Atiku Abubakar's main challenger in the primary, Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, is still aggrieved despite several interventions by the leadership of the party to appease him. Wike has since been hobnobbing with members of the ruling All Progressive Congress. Two of his projects were this week commissioned by two chieftains of the APC. Is the PDP going into the 2023 election as one and a united family? A member of the PDP, Umar Sani, joins us in the studio. It's a pleasure to have you join us here, sir.
It is my pleasure.
Yes, and while we have Aminu Saliu Yakudima, a public affairs analyst who joins us virtually to provide information. Yakudima, I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly, but correct me, please. Good morning and thanks for joining us on the show.
Morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Did I pronounce that name correctly, sir?
Yes, you did.
Okay. It's a pleasure to understand. I don't want to start paying fines this morning. Indeed. We will start with you. Thank you, by the way, for your patience. We understand that you've been waiting for a while. The PDP crisis, at the time, it appeared like everything was going smoothly after the conventions. We saw hugs, we saw happy faces, and then suddenly things took a different turn, and we heard all kinds of things. We've seen all kinds of images. We've seen accusation forth and back. We've seen governors not showing up at a supposed what do you call it, rally of another party that was another state that was supposed to be a prospect for the state. What exactly is happening with the PDP?
So many things is happening with the party, not only PDP, but other crisis is not new to PDP as a political party. PDP has experienced so many crises right in the beginning. And this is not the first time that the party, if you remember, to my reading, this is about the 13th crisis in the PDP right in inception. And I don't think something to worry about as far as the leadership of the party is concerned, because the crisis is part of politics as well. When you're political and you have membership within the rank and file of the political party, must have disagreement. Agreement is also part of partisan politics, is that happens in the political party. So I think it's something to worry about as far as the party is concerned. Even though analysts and pundits may get worried, people who are also studying the proliferation of political parties as well as the rudiments and process of internal democracy will get worried as well, because this is a democracy that is very young and the growth of democracy in our country. So if you are having the main opposition in crisis, is something to worry about. But I don't think the leadership is getting worried over what is happening.
Okay. All right. So, let me come to you as a party man. Well, we've had discussions with some party men, and the story has always been the same. Crisis? What crisis? This is a family affair. We'll sort it out, and there's no crisis. We're not seeing anything. But unfortunately, just like Sunday said, we've been hearing stories, we've had incidents, we've had accusations and counter-accusations being thrown here and there. We've heard innuendos being dropped in different fora. The PDP seem to have been a formidable force or a united front going into the primaries, and even immediately after the primary election. And I think we didn't get to where we are now until after the vice presidential candidate was actually announced. That was what made everything snowball into what it is as it is right now. So I guess my question is, we've seen the Board of Trustees meeting, and other committees have been set up to actually wade into this matter and sort out the issue. What is the current state of affairs right now as it is towards resolving this non-crisis or this family affair that we're actually witnessing within the PDP?
Well, I don't see it as a non-crisis.
Okay.
I see it as a crisis.
Okay.
And, the PDP has an internal mechanism. We are exploring all the mechanisms at the moment to be able to resolve the crisis. In fact, as at yesterday, there is a report that Governor Yesemuke has gone to court to insist that he is the candidate and that the court should declare him as the candidate because Governor Tambor ought not to have withdrawn on the day of the convention, okay, and at the venue of the convention.
Okay.
That is his submission. However, I am oblivious of any law that says that you cannot withdraw at any moment before the commencement of the convention. Perhaps he has legal advice that has given him that. But nevertheless, we continue to appeal to Governor Nyesom Wike and his group to see reason that the PDP as a main opposition is not the ruling party. And as such, we are trying to give a formidable, and coordinated opposition that will save this country from the current situation that it is at the moment. So the call is for national interest and not for personal interest. Because as it is now, the nation requires salvaging from the misgovernance of the APC, and the issues are so many. I am not trying to score the administration of President Muhammad Buhari in any way, but in any case, nobody is smiling in Nigeria. If you take a look at their tripod, they have talked about security, they have talked about corruption, anti-corruption or fighting corruption, and then they have talked about the economy. And if you take a holistic look at all these three factors, you will see that there is nowhere you can score them high or say the performance is satisfactory. So currently the nation is bedeviled with the issue of unity. That is why you have, calls for self-determination from various ethnic groups. You have the Sunday Igboho self-determination, and of course the IPOB self-determination calls, the MASOB, and so many others that are calling for, either a state restructuring or whatsoever. So it means something is deeply wrong in the system. And so the need for us to now rescue Nigeria from such vices is preeminent and should be placed far above any partisan or any personal gains or personal interest. So we believe that Governor Nyesom Wike, in spite of the court challenge, will see reason, with us, and of course, to the party's line.
Staying with you, I'm happy you have acknowledged that indeed there is a problem. As an average Nigerian, my worry is, how do you talk about rescuing the entity called Nigeria if you cannot rescue the PDP? The impression I get is, why is it appears like the fight is with Governor Nyesom Wike? We've seen other governors seem to be leaning on his part. We've seen the Benue State governor. I think we have seen Makinde of Oyo State. And two critical states of the PDP, it does appear. Is it a case of whatever reconciliation move that is happening not appropriately reaching out to the warring factions? Or what exactly are these issues that Governor Wike wants addressed, really?
Let me start by saying that, family issues does not translate to incapacity or inability to rule effectively, because everybody has family issues. Now you will be in your house and your child can be very wary.
That's right.
And then it does not make you a very bad administrator because your child is misbehaving or is doing some other things. So the fact is, we have family issues and we are trying to resolve it. And now one of our family members is a very critical and key stakeholder of the party. He has been there for the party and the party has been there for him. But unfortunately, it is a democracy and not an autocracy. So you must approach democracy on its own merit and in its own principles. And so you cannot take the presidency and say, okay, we are rewarding you, take it. You have to contest for it, and you have to campaign for it, and you have to lobby for it, and you have to win it and to earn it. And so I think everybody has seen that our primaries has been very transparent. It has been very free and fair and equitable. And so Atiku Abubakar won the primaries on his own merit. And now, having won the primaries, he is the candidate. He didn't say, I am going to, it's a winner take all. But again, Governor Nyesom Wike has indicated that he is not interested in becoming the vice president. He has indicated clearly. Now, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, in his magnanimity, because in 2019, when he selected Peter Obi as the vice presidential candidate, there were hues and cries. Even the sociocultural organizations like the Ohane Eze Ndigbo, and of course some very prominent Igbo, and even the governors of the Southeast, they raised objections to the method which he used. They insisted that there was no adequate and satisfactory consultations to be able to bring him on board. So this time around, he felt there was the need for that wider consultations and the need to be able to bring everybody on board. And he gave a mandate to a particular group. The group they are eminent members and critical stakeholders of our party, and they sat down and recommended 3 names to him. And he is the one who has the ultimate choice. And that is within the tradition of the PDP. Because even if you are very aware of how PDP does its own appointments in the past, you will discover that even if there is a ministerial appointment, 3 names are always sent and 1 is chosen. So this is within the tradition of the PDP, and he actually, selected the person he feels he can work with. So I don't think that should necessitate or bring up a crisis. Now, after that, the Governor Wike's group met and insisted on 3-pronged approach. They needed one, that the national chairman, Ayo, should step aside, and another person to step in. Number 2, they wanted Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to give a commitment that if he wins in 2023, he will only do one term in office. And then the third one is that every appointments that will take place after his winning should be done with their group, and in consultations with their group. These things were placed on the table. And after critical examination, there are some of these demands are not practicable. For instance, the party has a history, and that history is predicated on the fact that from 2015 to date, every national chairman of the party was put in there by Governor Wike. When Adamu Muazu left, there was a vacancy in the Northeast. And Governor Wike, together with Governor Fayoshe, brought in Alimodu Sharif as the chairman. And Governor Alimodu Sharif, acted within that period, for a period. And when the National Convention was to come up, they stopped him from further becoming the national chairman. And they moved ahead they moved ahead to put in Magarvi, who was to bring in an elected chairman. And Magarvi actually, set up a zoning committee. The zoning committee recommended that the position should be zoned to the southwest. And a professor who was a former Minister of Education in Jonathan's government was favored to become the party chairman. And all of a sudden, Governor Wike came in, stepped in, and insisted that it has to be Secondos. And the party took this line and voted for Secondos. So having brought Secondos in, again, Secondos was about to conclude his tenure, about 3 to 4 months to his tenure. Governor Wike stepped in, went to court, sought an ex parte order, and removed Secondos for no just reason. There is no reason whatsoever, because nobody has given any reason up to this moment why Secondos was removed. Again, in consultation and in cooperation and collaboration with Governor Otom, they brought in Senator Ayu as the national chairman. Now, he was the one who brought him, you know, believing that Senator Ayu will do his bidding. Unfortunately, Senator Ayu decided to be neutral. And so, like a very prominent commentator once said, that the better side won.
Okay. All right, well, at this point, let's bring in our virtual guest. My question to you now is, we saw the background, we've heard the background of the crisis in the PDP, and we've seen how things are actually unfolding. And we've seen how Governor Wike has been entertaining certain sections of the polity, you understand, and a lot of insinuations have been bandied around, and lots of permutations have been made concerning where his loyalties actually lie. Should the PDP be worried?
Yes, of course, PDP will be worried, because when you have a stakeholder of critical status in of a governor, also Wike, pulling out and try to form a very serious opposition group within the party is something to worry about. Formidable party, a stakeholder that is involved in the permutation and the promotion of the party activities. Not even Wike, other person. PDP has been experiencing a lot of crises as of the party when it was inaugurated on the 30th of November 1998. The first convention in Jos in 1998 had involved in crisis in the party. Fortunately, the party wriggles out itself and continue and form government, and the party was in governance for 16 years. Each convention that the party goes in end with crisis of one reason or another. Again, the national chairman of the party, from beginning, right from the pro-team national chairman, led Alice Ikweme, to Salah and Senator Chief Barnabas Gamade, as well as Audu Ali and Audu Obe, right to the present national chairman, Ayechu Ayu, the 16th national chairman. Nobody, any national chairman has ended a tenure peacefully, except Salamullah. And each tenure of the chairman in the PDP was crisis-riddled tenure. And this is part of this agreement that has to do with polity, which one should not blame anybody, but blame the actors or the stakeholders involved in the activities of the party. And I say, he has mechanisms, internal mechanisms of sorting out the crisis, and this one, I believe it. What Governor Wansom Wike is bringing to the table is something very critical that has to look at very critically as well, so that he can be persuaded to be back in the fold. But if this crisis continues to generate momentum, it means that the party will go into a general election in divided. That will be a costly and dangerous position for the party that cannot be able to put out itself. So it's very important, this crisis is leaving the board. There is a statement that the stakeholders had, and there is a meeting, yet another meeting, so that these issues clearly. But when you begin to say that one aggrieved person or group of persons will be left behind without employing voices of wisdom to see how they can be convinced to be part and parcel of the fall of the party, then there are going to be problems. And no party, no political party will go to a general election divided and expect to win. Be very, very difficult. There's need for PDP to reassess, realign, re-engineer, and try to have everybody on board because of the situation. And this one, the crisis that is coming unexpected because of certain interests that are involved. And it's surprising, as I said, all the political PDP have one crisis or the other, and nobody has survived such crisis except Salamullah that successfully. As, without Salamullah, no any chairman, national chairman of that party that has survived the crisis. So it's important that they nip things in the board so that all their access together and try to have one party with one voice and try to put what is a strategic framework for winning an election. Okay. It is not time for trying to generate crisis and disagreement whatsoever.
Thank you.
It is time.
Thank you. Coming back to you in the studios, clearly we have a crisis, as admitted by the two of you. And one would have thought that the gains that the PDP made, with what appears a very peaceful convention, should have given you edge with kickstarting your messaging ahead of the 2023 elections. That gain seemed to have frittered away, even though the ruling party seemed to have its own fair share of crisis. It meant the time that you should have used to advance your cause, you have spent trying to settle this problem. How much of time is there to salvage the current situation? And clearly, what has to give? On the both sides, there must be compromises if you have to move forward. What has to give on the both sides from your perspective? And is there a chance that this would have cost you some valuable time with regards to wooing people to your own side of the ticket?
Well, you see, politics generally is about alignments and realignments. At this critical time, you have seen people moving, which we call movement of the people, from one political party to another. These are times for alignment and realignments. Whether with genuine excuses or with flimsy excuses, people move. Maybe somebody is denied ticket somewhere here, and he feels he can no longer continue to work for a political party that has denied him ticket. It's a general phenomenon, which we all know. But that is not the critical question. Governor Nyesom Wike is banking on the fact that he has been a critical stakeholder, he has stood for the party, he has worked assiduously for the party, and so he has a sense of entitlement to certain things. However, political parties don't work like that. People who have suffered for political parties end up not being the beneficiaries of that political party, but at least they end up being either kingmakers or so forth and so on. You can take a critical look at this, without any fear of contradiction. I believe that the people who have set in motion the PDP itself is President Babangida and some other General Adil Gusso and the rest, because Babangida used to refer to them as the military wing of the PDP. And they put that machinery in motion, dictated the terms and then set the party on a proper path. Now the party has reached this stage. IBB himself has tried to contest within the party, and he lost. So you can be the benefactor of the party, but not be a beneficiary of that system. So the general issue is we are looking at ways and means now to be able to resolve this matter. The three issues he has raised are critical, but they are not practicable. You can't, with this type of history, now begin to change another chairman. at this point in time that we are supposed to consolidate, you know, and move, you know, like a team to the general election. You cannot, if you want to remove the national chairman, there are so many issues involved. One, the national chairman didn't come as a result of merely an election. There was also a committee that zoned the positions. So some of the positions were zoned because the national chairman went to the north, and so the other positions went to the south. Now, if you are removing the national chairman and you are saying that position should move to the south, then certain positions that are in the south must move to the north. And certain positions in the north must also move to the south. So it is a very tedious process. Again, there has to be a national convention to be able to actualize this. Now, within the time frame that we have to campaign, is it the time we will now go back and be doing a national convention of the party? It is not practicable. So, again, the second request is that Atiku should agree. Now, there are two issues here. One, he said Atiku has to agree that he is going to do one term. Now, what the law has given you as your right, you cannot waive it merely because of a demand. Even if you do that, and then you now come back and fail to implement, the people will say they have an agreement, but that agreement is in honor binding because the law will be on your side. Because the law says you can do 4 years and another 4 years. So for you to go and write an agreement and say, okay, I'm going to do 4 years, it's not practical. But again, himself, without being prompted, without clearly stating what he meant, but we also know what it means. Atiku Abubakar, in his own declaration speech, said he was going to run a transition government. And a transition government means that I'm coming to solve problems, and immediately I solve this problem,
set you on the path.
Set you on the path, I'm going. That is what Mandela's government was, a transition government. And it was just a one-term transition government. So you don't have to ask for it. The man has already said it. And now if you are talking about the other issue that has to do with consultation, Wike is a critical stakeholder. There is no way appointments will be done, you know, if we win, without consulting with him in certain key areas. More so, he carries along with him, you know, the importance of being the second, which means he is also adequately spread across the country in terms of reach. You know, so you can't say that he does not enjoy some support, some level of support, and then he is inconsequential. Nobody is saying that. So if in a negotiation process, you are able to get 2 out of your 3 demands, I think it is a successful, you know, negotiation process. So I believe that with that, unless of course Governor Nyesom Wike is still insisting that he has to be the presidential candidate, which is why he has gone to court. You know, I think the groundwork has been done for him to be integrated into the party and for the party to succeed. All right. Okay, that's quite interesting. Also, Malaya, could you, before we go on a final note now, I just let's talk generally. Let's talk generally about the 2023 election and the presidential race and how it's actually shaping up to be right now. We've been talking about the PDP and all that's been happening within the PDP. We should not forget the fact that the ruling party itself has its own issues or has its own family affair that is actually settling right now and it has its own problems. Do you think these internal crises rocking these 2 major political parties going into the presidential election have taken the focus away from an issue-based campaign? We're not talking about the issues now that we need to address as a nation, and we're strictly focusing on these crises of these political parties, because going into an election year, I think the issues we're going to face should be highlighted, and that is what we're trying to deal with. But instead, now we're looking at the individual crises rocking these political parties. Do you think this bodes well for the polity?
No, it's not going to augur well for the politics, certainly. But if you assess the situation clearly, especially the as well as campaign of the president, you understand and agree with me that Atiku Abubakar drill is talking to Nigerians and talking on issues based. Crisis, internal crisis, and you cannot avoid that internal crisis in a political party because it's part of partisan politics. Yeah. The ruling APC has its own crisis also, which they are to see how they can sort it out and nip it in the bud. These are things that could get us distracted and try to be issues of serious concern as far as the politics and Nigerians are. But what we have that are unpalatable in this country are so many that cannot be forgotten easily or try to be swept away, which must be because when you talk about the economy, is that is always in Wonderland economy, and you talk of the collapse of the security architecture itself, and the problems of collapse of infrastructure and education. These are things that cannot be shy away from, must be addressed, and cannot concerning governance and concerning the citizen, which has to be addressed. And the party put a strategic framework, try to see, educate the Nigerians and try to say this is how this issue can be solved. That have
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much for those insights right there, and we do appreciate having you on the program, and we appreciate all those analysis that we've actually listened to this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
You're most welcome. Thank you, sir.
All right, and well, I think this is how we're going to wrap it up on Daybreak this morning. It's been a wonderful ride, and it's been a pleasure being here, bringing it to you. And of course, we'd like to thank our guests right here in the studio for giving us a party man's perspective of what's going on in the PDP. We appreciate having you in the studio, and I believe subsequently we will be having further discussions on how things are going. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're most welcome.
All right, so this is how we're going to wrap it up on Daybreak for today. It's been a wonderful ride, and we hope you will have a wonderful weekend. Thank God it's Friday, as Sunday will always say. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Absolutely. The plane has landed, and has landed successfully, if you like. I wish you a very pleasant weekend, and Jumat Mubarak. I'm Sunday Michael Ogu.